We used to have a point man. He was walking down the road clearing anything that would destroy our tanks, and we heard a loud growl. We came upon a tiger that was like 800 pounds. He killed the point man because he grabbed him by his throat and he was dragging him into the forest. And we opened up on him with 60s and killed the shit out of him, you know. And they asked me if I wanted to be point man. I said, when hell freezes.
John, what did you do for a living?
Well, I had quite a few different jobs back then because money was always the motivating factor for changing jobs. I always went where there was more money. And I was a janitor for 4 or 5 years, and I worked in the warehouse for like 20-something years. That's where I retired from a truck driving school.
Oh, yeah.
I can't remember the name. Thank you, Parkinson's. But I was a warehouseman for like 20-some years. That's where I retired at 65 years old, and the rest of my time was being devoted to my wife and family and trying to make the best of the situation that befell me. I just never thought that because I served in Vietnam that I would be compensated by the government, you know, and that really helped. But then I felt like, you know, because they gave me the death penalty, they were paying me off, you know, with money to think that that would make the situation better, you know. But
did you get compensated from the government?
Yeah.
Really? What year was that?
When I filed a claim, you know, for my Parkinson's, you know, and because back then people were telling me, you know, you can get a lot of money from the government, you know, because I was like 100% bad, you know, so they knew that they couldn't kind of pull the wool over my eyes because I knew that I was going to be compensated, and that made up for a lot because with that extra money I was able to do a lot more things for my family and stuff like that. But I think, you know, when I look back at that Vietnam thing, sometimes I wish I would have never went. But, you know, I'm a very patriotic person. I believe that I can only give my life once, you know, I mean, and if that should happen to me, so let it be, you know. But I was fortunate that I was able to make it home when so many guys didn't, you know, and my heart went out to them. I didn't know them, but because they were there, we were like all brothers in the same situation, you know, and trying to deal with it the best we can. So I'm fortunate that I was able to come home and have a life and meet a wonderful woman and be happy for 30-something years, and something I never thought I'd ever experience in my life, you know, because sometimes when you go through life and people you think love you, they kind of fall to the wayside after a while, and their love, I think that sometimes they don't know what love is, you know. I mean, it's not just a material thing. It's a physical and spiritual thing, you know, to love somebody and be loved in return. And those were the years that were the best for me, meeting my wife, Robin, and what a wonderful person she was. And she was everything I ever wanted in a woman: honest, sweet, kind, sincere, loyal. I put emphasis on loyal because I had 2 divorces where they weren't loyal, and I had to walk away from that, you know, even though it hurt really bad, you know. But I figured, you know, if I keep my head up high and do right for others and stuff, that person will come into your life, and she did, and what a way to turn things around. I never believed that I could ever meet somebody that wonderful. So I thank God for that, and thank myself for being in good health to do all those things I was able to do for my wife. But now with this Parkinson's, it's kind of put my life on a hold, and because you never know, you know, how bad Parkinson's going to get. I know it's fatal and stuff like that, but I don't look at it that way. I look at it as a test to stay above that and not let those bad feelings come to surface, you know. But I've had a good life in Utah. I'm glad I came. It was everything I could only imagine, and everything came true.
Well, let's go back. Let's go back and first tell me your name and where you're from.
John Hastings, Stockton, California. So,
how old are you now?
76.
76. How old were you when you went into Vietnam?
19.
Tell me the lead up to that. What year did you go in?
I went in 1968, and I was in Vietnam in 1969. I served 3 years in the military and stuff like that. But
were you drafted?
No, I enlisted
Why did you enlist?
because I wanted to do my part. I believe that what we were doing wasn't right or wrong. It was just something that I had to deal with. You know, I mean, I love my country, and if it meant only dying for my country, I mean, I can only die once. You know, I mean, so.
Were your friends enlisting? Was that kind of a thing to do?
I never knew anybody that went there, you know, that from my hometown or anything like that. I just knew the people that were from my hometown that died there because I went to the Washington and seen the Vietnam Veterans Wall and seen their names, and it reminded me of those guys, you know, because they went to high school with me and stuff like that, you know.
And what was the vibe going on in '68 about the war? Was there a lot of negativity about it?
Oh yeah, they had a lot of protesters and people that wanted the United States to get out of there, you know.
So you were feeling that right from the start when you joined.
I felt like, you know, they had no right to tell me what a decision I was to make. You know, I mean, you know, and I wasn't afraid. I didn't think I was John Wayne or anything like that, you know, but I felt, you know, that if I watch myself and do all the things I'm supposed to do to keep alive, I'll be able to go home. I always felt that I'm going to make it through here. I don't care what those people said about 2 weeks, you know, that you might die in 2 weeks. You know, I didn't believe none of that. I believed that if I did all I'm supposed to do to keep myself alive, it was going to work out.
And you walked into the recruiting office. Is that how you did it, or how did you do it?
I went and signed up and stuff like that. I don't remember where I signed up at. You know, probably West Valley someplace. No, not then. It was back in California, because I flew out of Oakland to Vietnam. You know, so I guess that's where I enlisted right there when I was in Oakland, California.
And where did you go to basic training?
Fort Lewis, Washington.
Okay, and
that was an experience in itself, because me and the drill sergeant never got along really good. You know, I mean, I could tell you a story about that if you want to hear. Okay, I was in a C company in Fort Lewis, Washington in 1968, and we had a drill sergeant that right off the bat didn't like me, because he would come out at night and wake me up at 2 o'clock in the morning, throw my bed into pieces, and tell me to pick it up and make me run around the compound. And so I did what he said, and I even got to the point where I irritated him really bad by saying, "Can I run more?" And he got so mad at me, he just said, "Hell with it, John, just go to bed," you know. But
was he just picking on you?
Yeah, but I got my just upcomings with him, you know, because we used to pretend like we were hand to hand with Peugeot 6. And I was really good, because I was kind of halfway crazy anyway back then, you know, and so I had these two guys who were trying to hit me with their Peugeot 6, but I went nuts, and I was like hitting them like a baseball bat, you know. And the drill sergeant says, "I think I could take you." And I said, "Okay, come on." He got in there, and a few minutes later, he was like saying, I give. From that point on, he hated my guts. He made me do extra KP, made me run around the yard, doing all the other crazy things. But I knew if I just ignored that and just did what he said, he would get so sick of me saying, "Okay, that sounds great," you know, that he wouldn't bother me anymore. But when I graduated from Fort Lewis from basic training, he came up to me and said, "You know, you're the only one in our company that didn't make E2." And I said, "Yeah, I know that." I said, "But I kicked your ass, so didn't I?" And he walked away just cussing at himself, like, you know, he couldn't break me down like he wanted to, you know. I mean, I'm not saying that I'm a stubborn person and stuff like that, but I felt, you know, that it was all new experience, and I took it like a grain of salt, you know what I mean?
How long was basic? How long were you there?
3 months.
Always the same drill sergeant?
Always. And but you know, even in the mode that the guy was in, you know, he knew that I was a strong character, because he tried everything to break me down, and I just took it with a grain of salt, and that made him even madder, you know. But that's just too bad, you know.
Did they train you? Did you know you were going infantry? What were you training for?
Well, we used to go to the rifle range. That was my favorite part of being in the service, because I love shooting the weapons, and I was really good at it, you know, because I had a drill sergeant that would tap me on the helmet saying, "Great shot, John, great shot, way to go, way to go." I never knew what branch I was going into until I got to Long Binh, and they told me I was going to be with 11th Armored Cavalry. So I knew that was a tank company. And that was kind of frightening, too, to know that that's where I was going to sit on top of those and look for the enemy. You know, I never thought that, you know, how dangerous it was. I thought it was just an experience that I was savoring. You know, I mean, I took it as like, oh, well, only I can make it worse.
Yeah.
So, you know, but I made great friends, and I got really close to a lot of guys that were closer to me than my own brothers. You know what I mean? You watch my back, I watch yours.
Yeah,
and I hope you get home, and I hope you have a happy life. And so with that, I felt contented halfway, but I wish I could have kept in touch with some of them to see how their lives went.
Did you serve with anybody that you were in basic with over there? Or once you left basic, you were on your own?
Everybody went their own ways. You know, everybody had their own companies, everything like that. You know, I never really cared what company I was in, because I figured whatever it is, I'm going to do good.
Yeah.
You know, it's not, and as bad as it gets, I'm not going to let it get me down, because I want to go home.
Yeah.
You know, and that was always in the back of my mind. Do this, John. Maybe you'll be okay, you know.
Yeah.
Even though there was a lot of times when I felt like I could have been killed, you know, especially, you know, when divine intervention comes in and you can't understand why you heard that voice, or why that guy changed his mind on which tank he was in, or why, you know, you were doing the things that they wanted you to do, even though you knew there was a risk that it might cost your life and stuff. Because I just seen too much horror and stuff like that. And for years after Vietnam, I had horrible dreams. It lasted like 8 years. I thought I was going nuts. I even thought about committing suicide a lot of times, because the dreams were so intense that I'd wake up crying and shivering and shaking and stuff like that. I must have drove my first wife nuts. You know, I could imagine why she divorced me, you know.
What happened after basic then?
Well, after basic training, they sent me to Fort Ord, California for my second part of my duty. And I was there for, I don't know, maybe a month or two. Then I got orders to go to Alaska. And I was in Alaska for 6 months. But the first month I was there, me and the officer in charge, the captain, we hated each other. So there I was back in doing all these extra things again, you know.
What was up in Alaska? What were you doing up there?
Driving tanks and truck, heavy duty, you know, and stuff like that. I don't know what.
Was that training kind of thing?
Yeah,
wow,
it was.
Okay.
So, you know, then after a month, I put in for Vietnam. And 5 months later, I got orders for Vietnam, and I was happy to leave. And
Hold on, you got to back up. You put in for Vietnam. So you just said...
I was there in Alaska for a month, and I knew that I was going to hate being there for 18 months, because that was how long the tour of duty was.
Yeah.
And so, you know, I knew that me and this captain guy would never get along, you know, because I told him on the last day before I left, I said, you know, can I speak off the record? Because I like to clear some things that I'd wanted to tell you for the longest time. I said, well, that'd be okay. He said, sure, go ahead, tell me. I said, you know, I think you're a lousy officer. I said, your father's the engineer of this base, and you enjoy putting people in the stockade. I said, there's something wrong with you. I said, how could you be that way, you know? And he was kind of pissed off, but that's all right. I didn't care, you know.
Did you get put in the stockade?
No, they didn't. They wouldn't put me in there because they knew I'd probably enjoy it. You know,
so you wouldn't let them get the satisfaction.
No, I wouldn't, no matter what it cost. You know, I mean, like all the times they tore my bedding apart and made me run around the compound at all times of the day and night, and it got to be like, you know, because I was such a F off, you know, that a lot of the guys in my company hated me, you know, because they'd have to do extra push-ups and just
I see, because you just wouldn't give in to the
because
authority.
Yeah, and then I overheard them one night saying we should throw them a blanket party, you know, where they put bars of soap in a bag or something and beat you with it. I said, go ahead and do it. I said, because after you're done, when you're asleep, I'll just get my bayonet and I'll just go around stabbing all of you. And they thought I was serious, because they'd be talking like, do you think he'd really do that? You know? And I told him, yeah, I'd do it, you know. I said, nobody's going to be a punching bag over me, you know. I said, what comes around goes around. But they never did that, because they knew that I was halfway nuts and I might even try that, you know. But it was mostly just...
Did you like dealing with the tanks or no?
I did.
What did you do on the tanks?
I was a 60 machine gunner.
And what was the tank?
A little military ACAV. It's just a little tank that had two 60s on top, you know.
So you were on one side and the other guy was on the other?
Yeah, we were like, he's here next to me, and we were real close and stuff like that. But that's what I did, and I loved firing my weapon. I thought it was so much fun, you know, because we'd have like shooting rounds, you know, get ready for the VC if they came that night. So I made sure that everything on my bunker was correct. You know, I had all the ammunition I needed. You know, I had the weapons that I wanted to do, and my plan was when am I going to use the claymores? You know, because that only clears a path like for 100 feet. It's like when they're right on top of you. You snap that little snap, and it sends electrical charge to that area where the claymore is, and it blows everything away. And the thing that makes the claymore so dangerous is that they have all kinds of BBs and all kinds of things in there that, you know, when they go off, it just shred everything, you know.
How close? What's the danger zone on a claymore? How close could you be before? How far away did you have to be?
We were on top of our bunker, and we had all the snaps that going showing what direction the claymores were going to go. If they came to the right, you hit the claymore to the right. If they came to the left, you hit the claymore to the left. Or if they were coming right at you, hit the ones in the center. Most people had like 6 or 7 claymores.
Would they blow up like 50 feet around them?
It'd wipe out an area 100 feet.
Oh, my gosh.
Whatever was there, it was gone, because all those pellets and things that were embedded in that claymore mine
would just go flying everywhere.
Fly everywhere. You know, it even frightened me when I was just, you know, letting one off and see the intensity of that. It makes you wake up, that's for sure.
The 60 cal, how much ammo would you carry with you? Like
like maybe 1,500 rounds.
And how fast could you go through that if you were just firing?
Well, we were firing 600 rounds a minute.
So little short bursts.
You know, I mean, I look back at that night when we had that ground attack, and it was everything I couldn't imagine. Like, you know, they had helicopters going around dropping flares that illuminate the ground for hundreds of feet, and that way you could see the enemy and shoot them, shoot at them and stuff like that. And so, you know, we were relatively really close, you know, but we had the backs to the claymore, so we were safe, you know, because there was like a little impact, but we were on a sandbag thing, you know, that was well fortified, where you wouldn't get any repercussions from the claymores going off.
Well, let's back up. So you put in for a transfer out of Alaska.
Uh-huh.
How long after that did you end up in Vietnam then?
I waited a month. I was there in Alaska for a month, and when I got orders, they gave me the orders and said, you're supposed to report to this area, this place, you know, and you have to be on the plane for that date. And so I flew out of Oakland, California to Long Beach, Saigon, or whatever town that was there, and we were all gathered in a gigantic field. There must have been thousands and thousands of guys.
In Oakland, or when you landed
when I landed in Vietnam.
Okay.
Because you had to find out where you were going, you know. So they had towers and, you know, people telling you, John Hastings, you're in the 11th Armored Cav, and I'd ask these guys around me, what's 11th Armored Cav like? Are those guys bad? I mean, am I going to be in a bad company? And then they'd give me shit like, well, you're guaranteed 2 weeks, so it's up to you. And I'm thinking to myself, 2 weeks, God, that's not for much time, you know.
How many guys were on that? Was it hundreds, thousands?
Thousands.
Wow.
There must have been 5,000 guys out there at least.
Planes and everything, and loudspeakers.
And all these guys got their assignments where they were going to go for that year, and I didn't know anything about the 11th Armored Cavalry, but it sounded exciting, you know. I'm in a military tank, you know. God.
So then, how did you get to your place? You met up with your group. Talk about that. How did you find your group then? And
well, they drove me there or flew me in, you know, by helicopter, you know, or whatever means of transportation was available at that time.
And what was the area like?
Barren.
Like a desert.
Yeah, except where we were at when we flew in, it was like on top of a jungle. It was like, you know, a very, very limited space, you know. But, you know, as the years go by in Vietnam, the jungle reclaims all the territory that it was cleaned away to have military there, you know.
Oh, you're saying it was barren because they just cleared the jungle for you guys.
Yeah, but, you know, I think if I went back there now and try to see how Vietnam was, I wouldn't remember anything because the jungle claims it
Reclaim everything.
reclaims everything, because it's so wild and stuff. And to see all the animals that were wild that you would notice when you did bunker guard duty, like elephants and
You saw elephants.
tigers,
Wow.
black mamba snakes, poisonous frogs.
So was it like your area was cleared out and you were surrounded by jungle?
Yeah, we were like on top of the hill and the jungle was all the way around us.
And they just cleared the hill.
Yeah. So, you could have a place to stay and stuff like that because
How big is, what radius would it be?
I'd say about a football field.
Oh, so not very big.
Not very big, but it was pretty packed, so it was that in a way that was good and in a way it was bad because when they send mortars in with more stuff on the ground, they're more likely they'll be hitting you.
How many guys were there with you, would you say?
Maybe 80, 100 guys.
Not that many.
Not very many, but
And tanks? You had tanks there?
oh yeah. Yeah, there was a lot of
was
tanks.
just sandbagged all around?
Oh yeah, our quarters where we slept was sandbag all the way to our waist. So anything below the sandbag level was pretty safe in case they send mortars in or rockets and stuff like that, because that sandbag would absorb all that, and you wouldn't get hit. But
Did you sleep in tents?
yes, it was. And when I came back from Vietnam, came back from my R&R, and to see my tent with hundreds of holes in it where the mortars came close to killing me, if I would have been there, I would have been dead. I would have died instantly.
So when you land there, did you feel like you were on Mars? I mean, did it feel alien to you there? Or?
No, it's just like nothing good. You could see anything good out there, I mean, it was just like you and the natural surroundings and deal with it,
Could you see villages from where you were?
No, They were, Quan Loy was a little town not far from our base, and sometimes the officers would go to Quan Loy and for certain things that they wanted to see or, but it wasn't really a threat because the enemy knew that we were close, and so they didn't really show themselves until they were at the point where they'd take drugs and smoke marijuana, and you knew they were close because you could smell it coming from the forest, so we used to have these things called Mad Minute where all the weapons would fire and, clear, and what a sight, illumination of all the surroundings bright up, with all the firepower that we had, because we had
you guys are just, what did you call it? Madness Minute?
Mad Minute.
And you would just, everyone would fire off everything
Yeah,
you got.
so they get ready because after a while.
Is that, you just did those randomly or?
No, when we were on patrol looking for the VC, we'd set up the nights with around just a circle of tanks, and in between the tanks, we'd set up a big berm of dirt that we had a big bulldozer that would make it so it's one solid circle. And I was really lucky that night, because I was like at the bottom of this bunker where this big berm of dirt was like 2 or 3 feet over my head. And they started sending in mortars, and it got closer and closer. And this officer said, "John, get under cover." And just about the time I moved, one of the mortars hit on top of that berm and threw me back about 20 feet. I thought I died right then, because I was feeling myself, make sure there wasn't any blood and stuff like that. And then I heard somebody laughing, and I said, "I wonder what you can laugh in heaven, huh?" Because I thought I was dead because I could see the smoke coming out of my lungs and mouth and everything. And I heard these guys laughing, and I said, "What the hell are you laughing about?" And they didn't answer. And I don't remember it raining, when the mortar hit that bunker. But I found out that I was peeing all over myself,
Oh my gosh.
And they were laughing about that. And I didn't think it was very funny, but at that time,
Was it just the impact of the mortar that just knocked you back?
Yeah, it was like being hit by 4 linemen, at 250 pounds each. They threw me back a lot, and I thought I died, right there, because I could see my life go through really fast, like all these scenes about saying goodbye to your family and realizing that it wasn't your time to go.
When you got brought to that place, did you like the guys you were with there?
Oh,
what
yeah.
was that like? And what did they tell you guys were doing there?
I don't know. I made friends very easily, back then, because I figured I need all the friends I get in this situation. You know, I mean, I don't want to be somebody that gives you a hard time every day and you wind up killing them, But it was a test, but I handled it the best I could and just didn't let it get me down. Trying to be positive when you're trying to be blown up, it's kind of hard to stay positive.
And what was a day like there? What was your assignment? How often would you go out? What would you guys do?
Well, we'd do bunker guard duty or we'd do patrols, and they'd have so many guys on a patrol looking for the VC, and that's,
and what did that consist of? You'd leave the area and go.
Yeah, leave the area and look for them. And
how many guys would go out?
Maybe 20 guys, maybe like 6 or 7 tanks.
Oh, so you went with tanks?
Yeah, because I was on top with a 60 machine gun.
Is everybody in a tank when you're doing that, or some people walking?
Well, some people are in a Jeep, but most of the tanks were like up front and leading the convoy,
And there's roads coming out of there, or you just driving through the jungle?
There's just little dirt roads that you just made up as you went, But it was exciting.
How far would you go from the base? I mean, from where you were staying?
Maybe 20 miles.
So you'd go out pretty far.
Yeah, and I never carried a weapon either, like a dumbass, because you never know where the VC are, or what's
Is that happen. Because you just had the 60 cal? You were on the tank.
Well, sometimes the officers would drive me in a Jeep to take them to town. So I never carried a gun because they had a gun, if I needed it. But I was kind of too strong in my feelings, to let the situation take command of me,
And so you go out in the morning?
Oh yeah, and different times of the day, and usually not at night because then you'd have to set up an area for self-defense and stuff like that. But we had firepower that was unbelievable. I couldn't believe the excitement of all that going off and the illumination from those guns and stuff like that. It was like one big bright light in a circle. And we knew the enemy was close because we could smell the marijuana from the jungle.
Do you have ear protection? Would you?
No.
Because it's loud.
No, I didn't have. I just put my fingers in my ears.
I would assume it's pretty deafening when all that's going on.
Oh, yeah, but, I think your body gets used to a lot of shit after a while,
Yeah.
I mean, like it just becomes second nature.
So in a given week, how many times would you go out on a patrol?
Once or twice.
So not that often.
Not that often, but when we were out, we'd stay for like a week out there looking for them,
So you're camping out in the middle of
nowhere. Oh, yeah, nowhere, and I could smell the marijuana from the tree lines thinking they're going to charge, and I was like, oh, fuck, here we go. And, thinking that this was going to be my last merry-go-round.
What was your first combat interaction when you got there? You remember that? What was the first thing that really stood out to you
I seen too much because where I was stationed at, they always had planes, helicopters coming in with the dead, and I had.
They would bring him to your place?
No, they would take them to this medevac place and get them ready to send home, and I seen the death. 2 or 3 guys die every week or two, and they'd fly in. You could see their bodies and stuff like that. And when we had this mortar attack when I was there. Some of the shrapnel was going to kill you, but you would feel so bad when you see these guys dead and stuff like that. And I had pieces of shrapnel that hit me on my head and stuff like that, and I was under the bunker because as soon as you hear it go, you'd hit the ground and try to get under those sandbags.
Yeah.
But I was kind of late, and I felt like I got hit, because I put my hand on my chest and stuck it out in the light, and there was blood. And I said, "Oh God, I got hit," but it wasn't bad enough to send home, But other guys that came in contact with that were hurt really bad. I knew this supply sergeant who used to play with his .45 and throw it up in the air and try catching it and all that stuff. And I told him, I said, one of these days you're going to miss catching it and it's going to go off. And he said, it never happened. I was in line for dinner, and I hear him screaming. He comes out of that supply room, and he's holding his jaw. He shot his jaw off. And like, what the hell? It made me back up like 10 feet to see, what am I going to do with this? So those guys that got really injured really bad were sent home, because they couldn't be productive if they're hurt or in pain some way, But I got used to all those crazy things back then, I mean, it's just like, like one more thing to think about,
How often on those patrols would you get in a firefight or come on something. Was that very often?
No, not very often. But when it was really bad. You know, the bad thing about people dying is that smell I'll never forget. It was the most horrible smell ever. And then go out and pick up their dead bodies and throw them in the back of a flatbed and go dig them a massive hole, you know, with the bulldozer and throw them all in there, you know.
This is the Viet Cong.
Yeah.
You guys would bury them.
Yeah, and I'd see these fellow soldiers going to these people that were killed, and they're digging their gold out of their mouths and everything, and they'd come up and say, "John, this guy has a lot of gold. Come and get some." I said, "You're an animal." I said, "I don't want that damn gold." I said, "Is that all you care about?" And he said, "Well, I'm here. Might as well make some money off of it, you know." And it made me really mad. You know, I felt like punching their lights out, you know, but I just shook my head and said, "Stupid fools."
Did you spend all your time in Vietnam at that place then, basically?
Yeah.
The whole time?
Yeah, until the last few days, and they send you back home, back to.
So how many months? How many months were you there?
12 months.
So a year.
Yeah, a whole year.
And then you do R&R how often?
You're only entitled for one R&R, like 7 days out of the year. So you could go to any place like the Philippines, Hawaii, any place that was close.
Where did you go?
I went to Yokohama, Japan, on my first R&R, but I was really good, tight friends with this colonel. His name was Colonel Patton. His dad was General Patton.
Wow.
And I became really good friends. He liked my humor, and he liked how I was happy, even though it was hell there, you know. And he let me have a second R&R, and that's not even heard of, you know. He said, "I'm in charge. You can do what I tell you, you know." I said, "Okay, I'll be fine." So the second place I went to was the Philippines. And so I got out of the country for a couple of times, and it was wonderful.
But emotionally, what's that like leaving there?
It was comforting.
You felt a relief.
Yeah, a relief that I don't have to deal with it for 7 days.
And then that must be just that much worse when you had to go back.
Yeah, and then see my friends say, You're glad you left that night because we had a mortar attack and one of the mortars hit 2 feet from where you slept. It ruined my camera and ruined my clothes that I had in a little Foot Locker there. And
so back up, tell me that story. So you went to R&R. Is this the one you went to the Philippines or Japan?
Philippines.
Okay, you were there 7 days.
Uh-huh.
You had fun there?
Oh yeah, it was wonderful. You know, I didn't have much civilian clothes, you know, to go there, but where I was when I went to the Philippines, they had people that made clothes, so I got a couple pair of pants, a couple of shirts, and didn't cost shit, you know.
Yeah.
Because when I left Vietnam, the girl that I was playing with, I'm not gonna say, you know.
Yeah.
I gave her like $30 I had left, and I said, "This is for you." I said, "I don't need the money where I'm going." So she wrote on the back of this picture of me that I still have that picture. I don't even know how it got saved, you know, after 50 years or something.
Yeah.
You know, but she wrote on the back, said, "John, I'll never forget you." It was a wonderful time, you know. I had no stress, and to feel like being crazy, I did those things. But I shared that R&R with 2 or 3 friends that were from different companies, but not me.
Okay.
Not me, but we got along because we'd go swimming in one of the lakes that was not very far from where we were stationed.
So you made it back to camp.
Yes.
You go back to camp, and they say, "Guess what you missed?" Is that what they said when you went back from the Philippines?
They came up to me and said, "John, you're so lucky that you went on your R&R because that night we had a mortar attack, and one of the mortars hit like 2 feet from where you slept, and there was all kinds of holes because most shrapnel flies upward, you know. So if you're really low, you're not probably going to get hit. So you know, and it's the shrapnel that kills you. It isn't really the explosion.
So you would have been a dead man.
Oh, I would have been dead for sure. So how can you not think of that? Of what would really happen? You heard his voice saying you to leave. Am I losing it, or was that for real? But it happened like 2 or 3 times. So my mom used to tell us that we all have a guardian angel, and I firmly believe that my guardian angel saved my life 2 or 3 times.
What was the other time? Tell me the other time.
Oh, well, like when I'm outside shaving and they send a mortar in and shrapnel flies everywhere, and I was kind of slow getting behind the sandbags, you know. And then I went to the medic place to get the shrapnel removed, which wasn't really too bad, you know, just big cuts. But other than that, it was all right. But when I went to this medical place, they had this one kid who was involved in a helicopter crash, and he was burned like 98% of his body, and he's there sitting there laying on his bed, screaming his head off, and I'm feeling a little pain in the shrapnel. I didn't feel anything after seeing that, and I seen this lieutenant who grabbed him out of the helicopter. His hands were burnt bad, and all I could do is see his tears coming down his eyes because I knew he was hurting bad, But I felt so bad for this kid who I'm sure who died, from being burned to death, in a helicopter crash. It made me feel like I hadn't had nothing to bitch about. So, there was a lot of times I was trying, and a lot of times I felt like, I'd never make it out. But for some reason, my guardian angel or God or whatever you want to say intervened and said it isn't your time yet. When in reality, so many, it was their time.
You talk about the night of that big firefight. Can you set that up? You said when all hell broke loose. Can you tell me that story?
Well,
how long had you been there when that happened?
3 months.
Okay, so start there and just tell me what
Yeah, we had
happened.
a ground attack at our base, and about 500 of the VC were killed. And the thing with the VC is they try to screw with your head. So a lot of times we knew we killed these people because we could see them falling and dying. And then at the reckoning of night, they came in, took their bodies and buried them, to make you feel like when the morning came, you'd see there was nobody dead. But that was not true because you could see where the ground was upturned, and we'd dig out that dirt and find 3 here, 4 over here, 3 over here. And then to have to pick them up and throw them on a flatbed and go get them buried and stuff like that, it was a lot, because after that ground attack, I was like a mess for like 2 months, I couldn't get those pictures of the people dying and seeing what the weapons do to a human being. It was beyond
Set that night up.
imagination.
What happened that night?
Well, we knew that they were close because we could hear there's movement in the jungle, and they figured there was maybe 400 or 500 of them that were all band together to overrun us and stuff like that. But we had gunships with the minigun, and the minigun is a weapon on a Cobra helicopter that fires 2,000 rounds a minute, and that means there's a bullet hitting the ground every 4 inches.
Wow.
So if you get hit by one, you're going to get hit by 25 of them, So it was kind of like a giant lawnmower going right over you and just total annihilation.
At what time of night did that start?
Like 4 o'clock, 5 o'clock at night, and lasted till like 6 or so in the morning. I thought it'd never end, and I was such a mess. And my guy who was standing next to me on this bunker said, "Thank you for saving me," and stuff like that. And I said, "Well, we have to work as a team." I said, "You can't let what you see ruin the rest of your life, I said, "And I'm glad that I made you wake up and help me shoot these guys down because they were trying to get in any way they could."
Were you on a tank then at that point?
No, I was just on top of a bunker, paralyzed, with fear.
Did you have a 60 cal with you?
Oh yeah,
On a tripod.
yeah. You could get anything you wanted from the supply room.
Yeah.
Grenades, ammunition, 60 cal, 60. We used to have belts of 60 ammunition, like 750 rounds in a big can.
Wow.
And we'd have like 3 or 4 cans if we needed it. But I always put so much on the bunker, it was ridiculous. Like if they ever hit it with one of their weapons or something, it'd blow us to kingdom come. But I always figured I'm not going to run out of ammunition.
So did that night start? Were they suspicious? Did you guys have word that you were going to get hit? Or was that a surprise?
Yeah. They had radar. They knew that the enemy was close because they could feel the situation getting tense. When officers say, "Look out for this, look out for that, here it comes," and stuff like that and everything.
Were they all the way around you, or were you surrounded 360 on that, or no?
Our base had towers like every 200 or 300 feet, and it went all around the base. But on the other side of the base was with other units like 25th Americal and other places. So I didn't really see what was going on that part of the base, but all I knew was what was happening right here where I'm at, but that was another thank you, God, for letting me survive that. Because for like a couple of months, I was a mess. And I was like, so sad. And I couldn't believe what I seen and knew that I did part of that. It made me feel like I was a murderer, But I wanted to go home. And if I had to kill 10,000 of them, I would have, because I wanted to go home. That meant more to me than anything.
In that situation, are you trained to or do you just take just a little corridor? Or how does that work?
I covered all the areas, like bunkers were placed like 200 feet in a circle all the way around the base.
Yeah.
So, you knew where you were and stuff like that, because I'd stay close to my company, because that's where we had a really bad sector called the red sector, where all the water from monsoons would go down one side of the mountain. And so to fill that hole, we've thrown concertina wire, tin cans, claim,
Right.
explosives in case they try to go in that way and set off a flare. Because as soon as they set off a flare, all hell broke loose. It's like all the bunkers started firing, one way, and the enemy was trying to get in, and so they were running up the hill, and I'm firing at them, and I could see I'm hitting them because I could hear them screaming and stuff like that, and to hear that screaming in your mind, and it took months for it to go away.
How far away were they from you? How close did they get?
Probably 100 yards, 300 feet, about 300 feet.
And it's just hundreds. They're just...
Oh, yeah, they were trying to get in. They got in through the red sector because all those guys fell asleep, so the VC killed them. And those guys that got through into the base, they had special forces looking for them. They were throwing ricochet grenades in the underground and getting rid of the VC that were hiding and stuff like that. Me and my friend were walking down the street to go to the PX, and you could see this two bodies that were shot out of this tube from when the special forces threw ricochet grenades in there, and you couldn't tell which body belonged to which, and to see that and not think about it,
Wow.
Not till later, saying, I've really seen that. I couldn't believe it, it's a wonder I didn't go nuts. But
How many guys on the base died that day from that fight?
Probably 10 or 11, because they were throwing satchel charges into the tents, the VC, and they were just trying to do as much damage as they could. But special forces came in and took care of all of them. So
So that you got helicopters flying.
Yeah, setting out flares so you could illuminate the area, so you could easily kill them. Because you can't hide when you're in the goddamn open.
Yeah.
So I don't know.
Did that night take forever, or did it go by really fast?
It seemed like it took forever. Every minute seemed like an hour. I couldn't even tell you the terror that I felt. Because I thought I was going to die. I thought this was my last go around. It's my turn, but it didn't happen that way.
You just felt like there were so many they were going to overrun you.
Yeah, eventually.
So you were just trying to cut down as many as everyone was just trying to cut down as many as you could before they got.
Yeah, but that's why the gunships would come in and spray the area with their minigun, and it was so impacted by bullets that you could feel the earth move.
Wow.
How all those bullets hitting, and stuff like that. I think if you were to look for bullets, you probably would have found thousands that night.
The next morning, 6 a.m.
Yeah. I was so upset.
Are you amped up, or are you just wiped out?
I'm wiped out. I was like crying my head off and shitting my pants and everything bad I did that night, to get over that. I thought I'd never, ever see that horrible thing again. But for me, I was lucky, and thank God that I made it home and became a productive person when I thought my life was going to be over like 10 times in Vietnam.
Talk about the, you said there was a lot of Agent Orange. Did you see him drop that stuff?
No.
It's like they'd done it before?
If they did spraying, it'd be when you were asleep, so you wouldn't recognize what the hell's going on. What was hard to believe is like these jets would circle over the ground going faster and they'd drop all kinds of leaflets that said "Chu Hoi" for the enemy to surrender. And then as soon as they drop those leaflets, here comes another jet in with that gas that blew up like a football field at a time.
And was that the Agent Orange, the gas?
No, it was just they wanted to get the enemy out in the open. So then when the next jet came in and threw their bombs, it's like cleared the whole football field at a time.
They would disperse the gas and then.
I'm looking at that behind my 60 saying, "Oh my God!"
How far away would that be from you guys?
I don't know, 500 feet. Well, not very far. I mean,
Was that the night of the firefight, or was this other times? That was the night of the firefight.
Yeah.
Is that what they call napalm?
Yeah, napalm. That's what it was. I couldn't think of the name. Parkinson screws my head up big time. But yeah, it was. You could even smell the death out there, and that's the worst smell I ever smelled was a dead person. So I said, "Oh my God, I hope I never smell that again ever."
Was that so? That firefight, that was the worst thing that happened to you?
Oh
over
yeah,
there,
yeah,
by far.
Yeah. But the most wonderful thing was meeting all those guys and being close to them and letting them know that I'll guard your back, you guard mine, and we'll all get home no matter what.
Did you ever? How often would you come in contact with the locals? Very often.
Not very often. We had mama sons that would come and do our laundry and and bring us drugs if we wanted it. And I thought their drugs were wonderful because it made me not so frozen in my thinking. It kind of made me realize that that I feel better smoking this weed.
Is that what it was?
Yeah, it's kind of blocking the pain. That's reason why I smoked it.
Was that looked down upon on the base or no?
Nobody gave a shit.
It didn't matter.
No, what are they going to do? Send you to Vietnam?
And how often was that pretty common then to buy that and get?
Oh yeah, I was in need of it. I was introduced to marijuana. I never knew anything about marijuana ever. And then this black soldier came up to me and said, "Why do you smoke cigarettes?" He said, "Those are shitty. Why don't you try this?" And I said, "What's that?" And this brother said, "This is marijuana." I said, "Marijuana?" Yeah, like a stupid redneck, And I was hitting it like a cigarette. He says, "Don't smoke it like a cigarette. When you inhale, hold it." So I did like 2 or 3 hits like that, and I said, "I feel kind of good." I said, "What's that stuff called?" And he said, "Marijuana." He said, Your mama son will bring it in for you if you give her the money, So because all those drugs were controlled by the government. They made millions and millions selling drugs to the servicemen.
Interesting.
But I never let it interfere with when it was my turn to do bunker guard. I wouldn't smoke it or anything.
How often did you have guard duty?
Probably once every 3 days or 4 days.
And you're on for how long? How many hours?
8 hours.
8 hours.
8 hours. Well, the way it worked was that you'd have 2 guys on top, 2 guys on the bottom, and the 2 guys would safe up there for 4 or 5 hours, and they'd come down.
When you say on top, you're in the tower?
Yeah, top of the bunker.
Oh, okay.
And so when it was time for them to take our place, they'd come down, and it was our turn to go up there and watch the make sure we didn't run it across the NBA. So but
were you ever ambushed on patrol? You
oh
personally?
yeah.
You were. What would that be like? What happened there?
We were going down this road and we used to have a point man that would look out for claymore mines or whatever.
Yeah.
And he was a young guy, and he was walking down the road looking for anything that would destroy our tanks. And we heard a loud growl, and we came upon a tiger that was like 800 pounds. And he killed the point man because he grabbed him by his throat and he was dragging him into the forest.
The tiger did?
Yeah, he killed our point man. And we opened up on him with 60s and killed the shit out of him, But, stuff like that, I noticed something like that every so often, it became like routine, and they asked me if I wanted to be point man. I said, when hell freezes. I said, no damn way. I'll stay on my tank. At least I got some metal under me to protect me. But those landmines that they had were so powerful, it didn't matter, that you could be inside a tank and those shrapnels going around banging each corner and stuff, and like a machete being cut in pieces, and that was hard to take, seeing all that blood flow out of the tank door. And you know they were dead for damn sure.
So, you talked the last time we talked. You talked about fragging.
Yeah.
Tell me about that. That's something I don't think people know very much about.
There was this black soldier who was with a different company. I think he was 101st Airborne or 25th Americal, but he was in a different company. And every once in a while, you know, you could get care packages from home, you know, and this black guy had called, because once a month you could get an overseas phone call. So he called his family and said, I never received that box of cookies and all that stuff. And they said, well, we send it to you. This is like the second or third time we send it to you. What was happening? It was this officer was confiscating his packages and keeping the stuff to himself. And this soldier went up to him and said, I haven't received my stuff, and I think you might have some of it. So, but when he found out that this officer was stealing his packages and eating his stuff like that, he snapped. He put 20 rounds, M16 rounds, into this soldier because he snapped. And that guy definitely went to the jail, you know, prison. What was the call back then? I can't remember.
He was court-martialed, obviously, right?
Yeah, they sent him, and he was gone, you know, but I don't know whatever became of him, you know. I mean, did they let him go after so long, or did they find out that he had snapped, you know, and it was because of the officer that was doing that, you know? I never asked for any packages from home. I just ate whatever they got, you know. Sea rations weren't my favorite, but you could survive on
The
them.
other thing you said was that there was a lot of guys who just got sick of being sent on worthless patrols, and they would turn on the officers.
That's why the war came to an end, because after a while, you get these lieutenants, these 90-day wonders, who think that they know how to do jungle warfare when they're dealing with people who've been fighting for over 100 years, you know? And then for them to lead us down past when we'd say, no, we don't want to go there, it's too dangerous. And then if a couple of our friends got killed, that officer wasn't going to be around very long because we'd throw grenades in his tank, in his tent. That's how nuts we were, you know, back then.
How often did that happen?
Not very often.
But
Not very
enough.
often. But see, we were all kind of close quarters, so everything that happened, you could see it. You were told about it. You seen it. You know, I mean, there was no hiding. That's for damn sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was an unbelievable time. But you know, even all through all that horrible things that I witnessed, I think it made me stronger to want to fight and stay alive and do everything I can to be able to go home. So living like that was hard, but I dealt with it.
Have you seen any Vietnam movies, or can you not watch those?
I don't know. It's Hollywood's so bullshit. You know, I mean, they always make the situation way worse than it really was. You know, I mean, I'm not saying that things like that didn't happen, but I never saw it.
You did. What movies have you seen about Vietnam? Like
Green Berets.
You see Apocalypse Now?
Oh yeah.
Any
yeah.
of that? None of that seems real.
All the helicopter scenes were real. You know.
Yeah.
The sound of the helicopters. I'll never forget how a helicopter sounds.
Yeah.
You know, because I used to get on them all the time, dangle my feet over the side, and we're 300 feet in the air, and I'm taking pictures of where B-52s made their bomb runs. You can see holes everywhere, you know, and so I kind of try to enjoy myself as much as I can without thinking about killing, you know. But times like that, when they came up, you had to deal with it. You know what I mean? It's either you fight for your life or you ain't going to see your family anymore.
So you would say Hollywood, most of the Vietnam movies are
Bullshit. They just make it seem like they're way worse than that. I never seen people barbecued on wire and stuff like that, you know, like they showed in the Green Berets or any of that stuff like that. I'm not saying that things that didn't happen in other parts of Vietnam, but I didn't know anything about that.
Yeah.
All I noticed was in my presence, you know, with my company and the things all those guys went through. It was something else, that's for sure.
What was it like coming home?
Wonderful. Even though it took years, because I had nightmares for like 8 years after Vietnam, because when your eyes see something horrible, it's like a photo to your heart. You know, you'll never forget, you know. It's just, I was glad that over the years, my dreams went away, you know, because for a long time I thought about committing suicide because I couldn't deal with what was going on, you know. I mean, I couldn't believe that I was home. I couldn't believe that one day you're killing people and the next day you're buying clothes in the store. You know, I mean, the change was too quick. The transformation was too quick that, you know, you without any debriefing and telling you what to expect as a citizen. No wonder a lot of those Vietnam veterans wind up killing Vietnamese people, because for them, they thought the war was still on, you know, and I never felt that way. You know, I just tried to not be involved in any of that. I wanted to go home, and I wasn't going to let what was going bad at that time take control of me.
The suicidal thoughts, was it more?
I just don't want to see those things anymore, especially guys that you loved. It was hard. It was really hard. I wish I could have had some of their addresses to stay in touch with them, because they were special, no doubt about that. All those guys were so brave, and for me to even be a margin of their bravery was way consuming.
What's your, how did you get over that?
In time.
Just time healed it?
Yeah, I mean, being with the family and having children you bring into the world, and all the things you do with them made me forget about all the bad things before, that's for sure, because now I was happy I have a son that will carry on my name, and I hope he never has to go through what I went through.
Talk about Vietnam in particular, because you're like 16 years older than me, and I don't remember it. When I came of age, really, it was kind of, I just never remember hearing about it as a kid. And I know there was so much negativity about that when you came home.
I was never afraid, and I always thought that was kind of weird that I felt like, you know, all the bad things was happening wasn't affecting me. But in reality, it was. You know, all the bad things I thought about came true. All those bad dreams that I had were for real, because once I seen it, it was like a camera picture that you can never dissolve, you know. It's just like it becomes a part of you. I don't know. It was a bad time. But it was a good time, too, because I was able to come home and have a life. And I wished all my friends that I left back there went home and had wonderful lives, too.
When you came home, did you feel that negativity people had about Vietnam vets?
Oh, yeah. The people would come up to me and say, why don't you get a haircut? You know, because I wanted to find me. I lost me somewhere along the line, you know, in Vietnam, or which person did I turn into that I didn't want to be, you know, and have people come up to you and say, why don't you get a haircut? Like, I'd say, you don't know me. I said, shut the F up, you know. I said, you know, I don't need to hear shit like that. I said, I serve my country to protect guys like you, you know, and I don't need any flack from you or telling me I'm a child killer and all that shit when you didn't even know what Vietnam was about. All you heard was shit that you heard on TV, you know, and not really see the true thing that was going on. And then making me feel like, you know, I was a loser because I let my hair grow long. Like, you know, I didn't have a right to be there. You know, I mean, that hurt me more than being shot at, you know, that people could hate you and they don't even know you.
Yeah, and you volunteered to go over there.
Yeah, I went there because my country asked me to do it, and I would have done it over and over again, you know, but because I felt like, you know, I'm a citizen of this country. That's my country, right or wrong. Whether they're going to kill me or not, I'm not afraid.
Talk about Honor Flight. What is Honor Flight, and how did you find out about that?
My son-in-law got me a pass to go on the flight to Washington, and I swear it was the best thing that ever happened to me, because I carried hate and anger for like 56 years. I thought I'd never be rewarded with any good talk or anything and stuff like that. And I don't know, it's just really, really a hard thing to deal with when people that you fought for are making your life more miserable by saying I'm not worthy, you know, to be able to walk in the same room with you. I mean, you know, that's how I'm supposed to be treated. That's the reward I get. And for all those 56 years, I never got recognition until I went to Washington. Right then, it felt like the snow was on the hot ground and all those things melted away. You know, all those bad feelings and everything. And for once, I felt free, you know, that I didn't carry that weight in my heart.
Was it being around the other vets? Was it being in the cemetery? Was it?
It was
being
all that. Everything. I felt so proud, to be an American, to see all those wonderful men who gave their lives for this country, and people who live here think, that that should be granted to them with with nothing to do. Like, you're better than me because I didn't go to Vietnam. I mean, I think that's why I worked out for like 6 or 7 years. I got up to I was like 5'10", 235 pounds. I put on like 70 pounds of muscle.
Wow.
Because I felt if I dealt with some asshole, I'm not going to back down. I won't back down no matter what. And if he's in my face, I'm going to be in his face. Because I seen the worst. I knew nothing else could be worse than what I seen.
You got Parkinson's when? How old were you?
It's about 69, 70. I've had it for like 6 or 7 years.
And it's related to?
It's related to the Agent Orange and stuff like that. And I got not only that, I got the other death penalty by having diabetes. So I kind of got 2 strikes against me already. And I'm hoping that, that when I go, it won't be painful. I'm not afraid to die or anything like that because we all have to die. But I want to choose my own time. I don't want it to be shortened because maybe they found a cure for that. Maybe they did, I'm just not going to be experimental, And they're not going to dig me and cut me to pieces to find out how we could save him,
Yeah.
I'll just take my time as it comes and just deal with it with my head up high and knowing that I did right. I did the right thing, when so many guys were taken away.
It's been, 40? 50 years.
56 years. I was in Vietnam in 1969. So this 25th will be 56 years.
What's your takeaway from that now?
Now that I look back at it, it was a trying time, because I could have probably been put in jail 20 times for all the people I wanted to beat up. They got in my face and say, you're a child killer. And I said, you don't even know shit. I said, you don't know anything about Vietnam. I said, I was there. I seen what happened. I said, all you're doing is believing this stupid shit you see on TV, to make it more glorious than it really is. I don't know. It was a trying time, that's for sure. I thought, after all those years being out of Vietnam, that I would get recognition one day, and I was ready to just give up and say, well, I guess I'll never get the recognition I wanted. But I finally got it, and it was because I went on that trip to Washington. And I'll always be grateful to all those guys that I've seen and knew. And I mean, if I would have knew them closer, I would have gave them all a big hug and said thank you for your service too. I mean, we could say it to each other, I did what was expected of me, and I did it to the best of my capability, and try to be brave and be strong and not lose your mind.
You're a good man, John.
I try to be everywhere I go. I try to be nice to everybody because I know I'm not going to be here for very long. And I want to say all the things I want to say while I'm still standing, because I won't be able to talk when I'm laying down, that's for sure.
What advice would you give to somebody young right now?
Think seriously about what you want to do with your life. And try, if you're going to do the military, make sure you do it when there's no war going on. So you could have more time to spend with your family and stuff like that. It's not like you're required to be a soldier, that's something that you either do on your own or work hard at to be the best you can be.
When you were over there on that base, how many were enlisted versus how many were drafted?
I couldn't tell you.
You didn't know?
I couldn't tell you. I think a lot of them got drafted,
Yeah.
Because who in their right mind would want to enlist,
Well, you did.
I know. I was out of my mind. But I can't really say, my brother Tom went into the service the same day I did, and he wanted me to be in his company, but I didn't want to be with him because I really didn't like my brother that much either, because I grew up where he always hit me, growing up if I didn't do what he told me. So I kind of disliked him, and I said, no, I'll stay with my own company, thank you.
What did he end up doing?
They sent him to Fort Hood. See, and the way the military works now is that they can only take one of your brothers.
Oh.
Back in World War II, 3 or 4 brothers were in the service and they all died, so you had nobody to carry on
So
the name.
they wouldn't send him over in harm's way.
No, so because I volunteered, it excluded him from going, because maybe if he would have went, he wouldn't have been as lucky as me.
Yeah.
So for that reason alone, I said, I'll go. You know, I'm not John Wayne, or I'm not going to win the Purple Heart or anything by my actions and stuff like that. But I wasn't afraid. For once in my life, I was happy with my decision. Whether it was right or wrong, I don't know, you know, but that's the kind of person I am. I just, whatever the norm is, I'm not the norm.
When you were over there, did you do you feel like, I've heard from other guys that you feel a responsibility to the guys you're with. That's really what you're doing.
I wish that when it was my time to go, I could take them with me, you know, and get them out of there, you know, but that's impossible when you're a nobody.
Yeah.
And to the government, I was a nobody. Just a name, just a number. But I don't care how they classify you as what kind of person you are. I knew that I was a good person, and I believed that divine intervention saved my life and let me go home. I can't find any other reason, you know, how something so wonderful could have been a part of my life, you know, that somebody was watching my back, you know, not just my friends, but something spiritual, you know. I don't know. My mother always used to tell us we all have a guardian angel, and the guardian angel will save you, and I believe it. After the voice that came in my ear saying, "John, don't stay the night," and then me going there and coming back, and what it could have been, you know, it didn't happen. So I was grateful for that, you know, that I didn't get killed, you know, for making that decision.
Any other stories?
None that I could think of.
Anything funny happen over there that people would find unusual?
I don't know. I'm trying to remember. I don't know. I can't remember.
Yeah.
But I'm sure there's a lot of stories I'd like to say. But for right now, I just can't remember them, because that's what Parkinson does. It just erases your thoughts and your speech and everything.
You said you saw elephants, though.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
Where would you see those?
They were like, they came across into our wire that was out in front of us. We had 3 strands of concertina wire all around the base. So when sappers try to get in, they'd cut off little portions of the fence and move them out, big enough for a truck to drive through. And it's at night, you can't even see your hand in front of your face. I was saying, how the hell can they see what they're doing? You know, that they create an opening so the enemy could flow through there. But we stopped the flow because the ammunition that was dispensed in that area was too great, and they had to back off. So, you know, and then me screaming all through the night, ah! You know, embedded with my fingers in the 60, firing as fast as I can, hoping that I could push them away from my bunker down into another area, you know. But it was horrible for at least 8 or 9 hours.
How high was the hill above the ground, would you say?
I'd say like maybe 30, 40 feet above the ground.
Oh, so not much.
No, it wasn't. It was just a little patch of earth, you know. I mean, not very much. I mean, I got pictures of Vietnam I could show you, know, where I was stationed and everything, because that's what I did.
I would love to see those.
Yeah, because I didn't have anything else to do, so I took pictures, you know, when I had nothing to do, you know, and something that if I got home, I have a log that showed where I was and the weapons that I.
How often would you fly on the helicopters?
Whenever they send you, because I had alternate MOS. I was.
What does that mean?
I was infantry, and I was radio repairman.
Oh.
So a lot of places that were like out nowhere land, they'd fly me in, and I'd fix the radio for them so they could stay in contact with headquarters, and then I'd beg the guy to let me go. Let's get out of here, because it was like two or three people there, you know. And
so they just fly you out in the middle of nowhere.
Yeah, and drop you off, and then I called them and said, "I'm done with the thing. Come and get me now."
How long would you usually be there doing stuff?
6-7 hours.
Did you enjoy actually repairing the stuff?
Oh yeah, it was nice. I mean, somebody had to do it, you know.
Yeah,
I mean?
But it was a little intense because usually there wasn't a lot of support around there.
They had this 101st Air this company that was lifting heavy stuff, you know, with the cranes. They look like big giant grasshoppers.
Yeah.
Sky crane. They tried to outlift those ones that have the 2 blades on top. I can't remember the name of the tank, but they had a contest between who could lift the most weight. This Sky Crane or this other tank,
Right,
other helicopter, Chinook,
Yeah.
the Chinook, and they were trying to see who could pick up the most waste. But what happened was the Sky Crane flew away with its load to where it was going, and the people in the Chinook took off, but they had a weight their weight was too big, and it screwed up their landing. And they were like flying over our base, and they were calling, "Can we use your alternate airplane? We can't get the helicopter under control." There was this one guy that when he was crossing our company, jumped out of a helicopter, and he was like 35 feet in the air. He broke his leg really bad, but the guys who stayed with the Chinook went out to the field, past the concertina wire and everything, turned upside down and came down in halves. And hundreds of guys were running out there to see if they were still alive, but they were dead.
So one guy jumped out.
Yeah, so he lived,
Wow.
because you could hear the blades hitting each other. And I'm looking at it in disbelief. I said, I can't believe that what I'm seeing. And then, one guy was at the doorway and he got shot out. He was like 400 feet in the air. And you could see his body falling. I seen more than I ever wanted to see, that's for sure. It was horrible. I think if I'd have caught that on film, I would have won an award, so people couldn't say, yeah, that really happened, and 4 guys died for playing their stupid games with who could outweigh the helicopter, the Chinook or the Sky Crane.
The people always say the war is just sheer boredom mixed with sheer terror. Is that true?
Oh, yeah. A lot of times I'd be really happy, like when some of your friends have a birthday and you're celebrating, you all get high together and savoring that moment, when you were happy, which wasn't very often. But when we did celebrate, it was like all the way, singing Merry Christmas and sending those tapes back home to their family, and simple things that meant so much, when you were deprived of so much.
Would they, how, I don't know if did you ever see Apocalypse Now? Do you know that part where they had the big show and they had the Army guys there? Did they ever do that kind of stuff for you guys?
I don't see that either.
You didn't get any?
No, I didn't see that.
The Army didn't send entertainment to you guys?
Hell, they didn't give a shit about us. All they cared was that we kept the count of BC go higher and higher. Whatever they killed of Americans, which was probably 560,000 guys, we must have killed 2 million of them. Because that's what was our job.
If you guys killed 600 that night or 500 that night, and there were only 8 of you, or 80 or 100 of you,
we got this message on the radio saying they found activity in a certain area, and when we went there to go look, that the Huey gunship with the little loaches would fly above the tree line to draw fire from the enemy that they're hiding down there, and if they came in contact with that fire, here comes the gunship, and it'd spray the whole area. So by the time we got there in our tanks, we found like over 250 guys dead.
And you guys were responsible for burying them?
Yeah. But we had a bulldozer, so it wasn't too bad, It's like those pictures of people in
World War II.
Yeah, Jews and stuff like that. They buried them with a bulldozer.
Dude, that's a rough thing to remember.
Yeah, and so, all the things that I seen bad, no wonder I had bad dreams for 8 years. I thought I was going to die from just crying myself to sleep. It was intense, that's for sure. But
was there anybody you could talk to about that?
No, not really. You can't talk to somebody who don't know what it'd be like if they were there. You could tell them how it was, but whether they believe you or not, that's another story,
Yeah.
But it took its toll on me, but it never stopped me from loving my kids and stuff like that. That's for sure.
How many kids you got, John?
4 kids.
4 kids.
Yeah.
They all around here?
No, they're all in different states. I got a son that lives in California. I got a daughter that lives in some Washington or someplace, and they're all over the place. Anyway.
You got grandkids?
Yeah.
How many?
I don't know. 2 or 3.
A lot? Oh, yeah.
Yeah, not very many. My sister probably had 4 or 5 kids, and one of my sisters and my other sister had 3 or 4 kids, and I'm the only one that only had 2 or 3, so I was the lowest number, but it didn't mean much.
Yeah.
Because of me being with them made me heal a lot quicker, you know,
Yeah.
and get over all the horrible things that I seen when I was in Vietnam. But you know what? Even to this day, if I was young again, I'd do it all over, just so I could be around those guys and tell them, you know, you're loved no matter what happens.
Thanks for your service, John.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Anything else you want to say?
Not that I can think of.
You want to go get lunch?
Sure. Wouldn't mind that at all. But I have to buy.
No, you don't. I am going to buy.
That
All
was,
right.
That was a hell of an interview.
Beautiful. Thanks for sharing those stories.